Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now.
Good afternoon. Thank you. As you are aware, a wonderful gentleman has been lost to us. So we're here today to remember Brian Harold McINERNEY and to celebrate his life. I'm Graham Sayre and I'm very privileged to have been asked to conduct this service for Brian today. I ask that you please feel free to be at one with your sorrow, your sadness, your grief and your memories. But I also ask you to also feel the gladness, the happiness, the purpose and the serenity of a life well lived. We're here today because Brian found the comfort of contentment and peace as we commemorate with sorrow but also with respect, joy and thankfulness for Brian's life. I thank you all for your presence here today, especially those of you who have travelled. Brian's family would also like to acknowledge William McINERNEY from Northern Territory, Lou and Jen Smith from Adelaide, Pauline and Greg Gatley from Bundaberg, Pat Tennyson from Wagga, Ian Campton from Sydney, Malcolm and Dorothy Adams from Kadina, and the other Brian and Jan McINERNEY from Clare, all who are unable to be with us today, but I'm sure are thinking of us. Thanks also go to the many people who have telephoned, sent flowers, cards and messages to the family, expressing their sympathy at the passing of Brian. It's also important today we remember people special to Brian, those who have passed away, but are certainly not forgotten. We particularly remember Brian's parents, Harold and Glad. They are reunited once more. Born on the 9th of May 1941 in Kadina, Brian was the cherished son of William Harold and Gladys May McINERNEY. He grew up alongside his brothers Barry and Trevor on their family farm. His parents instilled in him a love for the land, and together with his brothers he continued to nurture and work the family property with much dedication and pride. Brian received his education in Port Clinton and Kadina districts, laying the foundation for a life of hard work and community involvement. On the 12th of July 1969, Brian married the love of his life, a lovely Janet Brady. Their union was blessed with 3 wonderful children, Kim, Karen and Duncan, not necessarily in that order, sorry. He was Pampa to Karen and Troy's children, Keely and Thomas, Grandpa Mac to Duncan and Billy's children, Harry and Shardy, and Grandpa to Kim's child, Sky. In many ways, death unites us all, for it demands that each of us put aside our work, our business, and our pleasure to unite ourselves with everyone here, fellow mourners who share in a common bond of love and respect for Brian. As with any memorial service, we gather to mourn a departed loved one, pay tribute to their achievements and their life, comfort one another and give our support to each other. These are not enough to soften the blow of the experience of death. We can feel a great range of emotions, anger, pain, hurt, sorrow and grief. But there is one thing that cannot be taken away from us, and that is the experience of loving and the experience of friendship. When we lose someone dear to us, the hurt can be almost unbearable. Yet somehow we seem to get through it, and I believe that is because we feel so much pain. Because the inner ache is so great that the grief and the heartache we feel bears witness to the depths and the strength of our love for Brian. For you see, grief is a great indicator and measure of love. It simply cannot and does not exist except where there has been love. And I am sure that Brian would not want you to grieve in hurt or pain, but think of the joy that he has given, that he has received, and that he has shared. You can shed tears that he's gone, or you can smile because he lived. You can close your eyes and pray that he will come back, or you can open your eyes and see all that he left. Your heart can be empty because you can't see him, or you can be full of the love that you shared. You can turn your back on tomorrow and live for yesterday, or you can be happy for tomorrow because of yesterday. You can remember him and only that he is gone, or you can cherish his memory and let it live on. You can cry, close your mind and turn your back. Or you can do what he would have wanted. Smile, open your eyes, love and move on. Family and friends, everyone who is here today is a gift to everyone else here. When we are together, just our presence, even in silence, is a deep comfort. For who among us does not pass through the trials and bereavements of life? Some will bear fresh wounds in their hearts and feel very keenly the kinship of sorrow. Others whose days of mourning are more remote still recall the comfort that sympathy brought to their hearts. To those who are very close to Brian, no one can predict what feelings and experiences will arise in the months and even years to come. There may be waves of joy and sadness and tears. Everyone who is here is proof that you do not have to ride these waves alone. We know too that it is not only grief that we will feel. There'll be genuine smiles and gratitude for the memories that Brian has given us that can never be taken away. So feel free to share those stories, the happy ones and the not so happy ones. The family, together with daughter Karen, have prepared Brian's eulogy, and I share that with you now. Brian Harold McINERNEY entered this world on the 9th of May 1941 at Sister Berry's Hospital in Kadina. The first of three sons to William Harold and Gladys May McINERNEY, née Harrison, who were living in a small stone home near the Cainton Church at the time. His middle brother Barry followed in 1944. The family then moved from Cainton to Clinton Centre to share farm for Jasper Porker on what is now Coleman's Farm. In 1950 they moved 2 miles across the paddock to the farm known as Tucker's, which was owned by J.C. Price. This was the beginning of a long association with the Price family, and Brian lived in that house for the remainder of his days. Brian went to Port Clinton School until that closed in 1947. He went on to attend Clinton Centre School, where a specific incident led to his mistrust of horses. Barry has the graphic details of this chapter. You might be able to ask him later. Then on to Price Primary School, followed by Kadina High School. Brian stated that he didn't much enjoy school except for visiting his friends and participating in the school's football and cricket teams. At around 15 years old, Brian began working on the farm with his father Harold, share farming for the Price family. He used to trap and dress rabbits and sell them to a hawker who came round once a week. This made his regular income. He said they were forever picking stones. Little brother Trevor came along in 1958 when Brian was 17, and Brian doted on him. Trevor will speak about the three brothers' life on the farm together shortly. Brian met Jan at Kate Northworthy and Barry Birkin's engagement party in 1966. On the 12th of July 1969, they married at St George's Church of England in Gawler. After a fabulous honeymoon to the west, which was also really just Brian's way of looking at every stud piggery in Western Australia, Brian and Jan returned to live at Clinton Hills, while Brian's parents moved to their new home in Port Clinton with Barry and Trevor. That trip was a foray for Brian and Barry to show stud pigs at the Perth Royal. Over the years, Brian judged at the Toowoomba Show, the Perth Royal Show and many others. The brothers and Jan went to sales all over the state. Jan and Brian took a trailer load of pigs to Kingaroy when Karen was little in a bassinet on the back seat of the car with a seatbelt around it. Wouldn't get away with that these days. We had many years of enjoyment going to the Royal Adelaide Show as a family, showing his pigs and pigeons. Many an hour was spent in that pig bar when all the day's chores and events were done. It was the highlight of Kim and Karen's year because they always got to go to the show and would pore over the show bag catalogue in the Sunday Mail for weeks beforehand, with Grandpa Mac deciding what to spend their pocket money on. Brian's legendary in the family for his non-stop road trips. We'd all pile into the car thinking we'd go for a nice Sunday drive, and that's what it was, a Sunday drive. You didn't stop anywhere, aside from our picnic lunch, or even get a pit stop unless absolutely necessary. In later years, he was obviously sick of us all whinging, so he would relent and let us stop somewhere again for an ice cream or a drink. Duncan and Karen love road trips to this day, but Duncan does them Brian's way, and Karen likes to do them Jan's way and actually get out of the car. Brian's love of pigeons began when he was around 11, when Harold brought him to Carnew. I hope I've said that right. Carnew. They're a type of pigeon for those that don't know, although I've seen a few badges today that might teach me a thing or two. His love of birds was fully encouraged by Ron Rodder, who used to take him to the Royal Adelaide Show to show his birds even before he had his car licence. He joined the York Peninsula Poultry and Pigeon Club. Jan bought 2 pair of pygmy pouters, for Brian at Yana Thomas's clearing sale, and he decided that if he was going to keep pigeons, he wanted fancy pigeons. So back came the Jacobins. He was a member of the York Peninsula Poultry and Pigeon Club, SA Canary and Pigeon Society, Australian National Pigeon Association, the Australian Jacobin Club. He held various committee positions, including roles as president or secretary, and was always a reliable, honest and useful committee member. Brian and a group of pigeon enthusiast mates got into Nuremberg larks and imported some from America. All of Brian's show pigeons had a wonderful life. They were washed and blow-dried, taking over the whole bathroom. On one occasion, Grandpa Mac came to the house and saw all the pigeons in cages on the back lawn ready to be washed. He jokingly said to Duncan, "You should just put the hose on them." And Duncan did. Jan had a fit. There was mad panic to get them washed properly and dried. Jan thinks he won the trophy that year at the Royal. Brian could make almost anything. He welded up a netball ring for Karen to practice her goal shooting, made up a huge shade house for Mum's orchids, and welded up cricket stumps for the boys. He made his own prickle chain, seed bins and stock crates. Any new machinery that came on the farm would get some kind of modification. Brian was a member of the Paskeville Agricultural Bureau from 1978. He was heavily involved and always looked forward to the Paskeville field days. His kids loved jumping on the trailer with hay bales on it and roaming around the whole site with Brian at the wheel of the tractor until that got banned as unsafe. In later years, he did his stints in the museum. He very much enjoyed his association with this group, especially the annual dinners and the trips they went on. He was also part of the group that went over to help the Pinery fire victims refence their farms, as he was profoundly affected by their losses. This event reminded him of the last large blaze that burned from Kadina to Arthurton in 1960, which he and Harold went to fight with many other neighbours. This also led to his involvement in the local CFS. Jan and Brian were on the emergency CFS party line for the Port Clinton CFS for many years, until pages came into effect. The enormous bell is still attached to the back veranda and frightened the 245 dots out of anyone near it when it went off. Brian followed in Glad's footsteps and played lawn bowls at Paskeville until he had his bowel cancer operation. He enjoyed this time and camaraderie with his fellow bowlers. You boys will know who you are. Brian said once, "It's good to have somewhere to go to show your respects." He was laid in to rest this morning at Kulpara Cemetery, close to his parents and numerous other family members, which was in accordance with his final wishes. Brian's lovely wife Jan has a message for him. I met this quiet, handsome gentleman at a girlfriend's engagement party. We both saw each other and then slowly made our way around the room towards each other to talk. After knowing Brian only a short while, I invited him to my nursing graduation at the RAH in 1967. Mother and father, Mac, and Brian's brothers made me feel so welcome and part of the family. The friendship blossomed into marriage in July 1969. Our honeymoon was one of the happiest times of my life, even if it was looking at a group of stud piggeries. We kept records of the whole trip, cost of fuel, distances between stops, places to feed and water the pigs on dusk, as this was a lead-in to Brian and Barry showing stud pigs in the west. It took 3 years to work out the requirements for the Perth Royal. Brian and I were going to do the first big trip, but he ended up in Kadina Hospital with pneumonia and pleurisy. So Barry and Maury Wakefield did the trek the first year instead. Brian and I did the next year, and it was the best sail we had ever had. We had many wonderful trips with a trailer behind us full of pigs to go to pig sales all over Australia. Brian built a chook shed for 500 layers, which would become my job to keep me out of mischief until the children came along and provide some extra income. We were blessed with Karen in 1971, 3 days after Brian's 30th. Karen says it was the best birthday present ever. Kim joined our little family in 1974, and then it grew again in 1982 with the birth of our youngest, Duncan. Brian have made wonderful friends over the years. We've had fun times at local dances around the district when Brian was president of the Cainton Hall. The children learned how to dance at a very early age, but were mostly there for the supper at the end of the evening. Mock weddings and dress-up parties were big in the 70s and 80s. Brian would only dress up under sufferance, but would end up thoroughly enjoying himself. The funniest was Brian dressing as a bikie with tats, wearing jeans for his mate Pat's 50th. If he dressed up for one of your parties, you know you were loved. Brian and the kids surprised me with a houseboat trip up the Murray with close family and friends for my 60th. He drove around for half the day on one of his Sunday drives, making an excuse to go to the Totnes, built by my grandfather Little at Mount Pleasant, and then on to the river for a bit of a look. He didn't often surprise me, but I screamed and nearly dropped Keely, my granddaughter, when all my friends popped out of various rooms on the boat. I loved listening to his stories when he got home from pigeon shows about the shenanigans that mates got up to. Brian would say that he'd stay in the hotel room and wait up for them. Brian missed his one and only Paskeville days so that he could go to New Zealand. We had a wonderful time catching up with friends on our North and South Island tour. I had many wonderful trips with Brian when he was invited to judge at shows. We met some lovely people and characters, and we saw most of Australia in the process. One of our biggest road trips was a lap up to Northern Territory, Kakadu and Litchfield, and then around the Kimberleys and down the west coast, across the Nullarbor and on to home. We also had a wonderful cruise to New Zealand with our good friends Di and John Short in 2019. It really was a holiday. No cooking, cleaning, or continuous driving, but Brian thoroughly enjoyed the holiday. My darling cracked 3 ribs and bruised his kidneys early in 2019 when he flew out of bed in the middle of the night for a fire alarm. He's been struggling with his health since that time but never complained and tried to make the most of the time that he had left. Recently, Brian would stand at the back gate and look down toward the shed, waiting to see when his brothers had arrived. When he knew they were down the shed, he'd head on down and sit on his chair in the sun and just chat. And Brian said Bonnie the dog was the referee. Thank you, Barry and Trevor, for being such wonderful brothers to him. I love my darling dearly. He was my best friend and soulmate and the best dad to our kids, their partners and our grandkids. Rest in peace. Breathe easy, my darling. Youngest son, Duncan, has a tribute to his dad as well. My dad and my mate, cool, calm and collected he was. Selfless, a man of few words. But when he had something to say, he listened. He had many endearing traits. Dad loved a good-looking bird, the feathered kind. The destinations he travelled to, the success and awards he achieved, and the friendship he fostered through his passion of showing and judging pigeons gave him great satisfaction and made his family proud. A man of the land, Dad dedicated his life to farming. Many hours were spent with Dad on the tractor and harvester. It was no surprise that my passion for farm machinery was born at an early age thanks to him. Through all the seasons, good and bad, his perseverance and determination to get the job done to his standard was admirable. Not everything always went to plan though. There was the occasional breakdown. Dad had an amazing talent for constructing the best sentences to express his disappointment and frustration towards the design and manufacture of some machines. I would just smile or laugh at him, which usually resulted in a smile or a smirk back. Sometimes it even helped to simmer any emotion from all the commotion. Dad loved a road trip. He rarely stopped to look at anything, he just enjoyed the countryside. The opportunity for a trip to Temora, New South Wales came up a few years back. I rang Dad and asked if he'd like to tag along. Yep, was his answer, and the following day he rocked up with his wallet, water bottle and overnight bag. Off we went, only stopping for fuel and something to eat. While I was attending an event, Dad decided to go on his own road trip throughout the central west of New South Wales. A road trip within a road trip. Not fazed by the 40-plus degree heat on the day of coming home, he waited for me to finish, parked under a tree without the air conditioning running. He was content reading the previous week's stock journal and listening to Country Hour. No fuss, no stress. I'll always cherish the visits to the farm where Billy, Harry, Shardy and I would all go for a crop inspection and a run around the sheep with Granny and Grandpa Mac. The barbecues on the front veranda, the comfort fires in the scrub, the discussions about farming and machinery. His perspective on some of life's woes and the road trips will be sadly missed. Rest easy, Dad. Love you, your youngest, Duncan. On behalf of Brian's two brothers, Barry and Trevor, Trevor has a tribute to Barry to share with us.
Thanks, Graham. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Trevor, Brian's much younger brother, and I have the honour of telling Brian's farming journey. And together with Barry, we have put down our thoughts and our memories of that journey. Before I start the farming journey, Barry and I have got a few personal memories to share of our friend, workmate, mentor and brother, Brian. Barry remembers while Brian and himself were still at school, they would catch and trap rabbits sold to Bonnie's rabbit buyer, banking 10 shillings a week in their school bank, and this money eventually went towards buying their first car, a brand new EK Holden. In his early years, Brian loved cars, especially fast ones. One story Barry told me was of Brian blowing up the engine in the Vanguard U. Took it to Ardrossan, had it repaired, rebuilt, but somehow it blew up again on the way home. Same driver, what a coincidence. Barry also recalled going to Snowden's Beach at North Arm for the powerboat races quite regularly. I remember while I was still at primary school, Brian and Jan, before they were married, letting me tag along as a pesky little kid to the Colin Grove Hill Climb, also Adelaide International Raceway at Virginia, all car related. However, they did also take me to Maribel, the zoo and many other places. Lifelong memories for me. One thing we all remember about Brian is his rubber boots. Anyone that ever saw him working, from the pig sheds to the shearing sheds to the tractors and headers, 15 degrees or 45 degrees, he always had them on. During harvest one year while pulling a prickle from his sock, Barry made a comment about his rubber boots. Brian's quick reply was, "At least I haven't got prickles in my socks." And you'll be glad to know the rubber boots are down the front of you today. Brian was also an avid reader of the Chronicle and later the Stock Journal. The way he would read it was start at the back page and then work his way forward. And then rereading the paper several times during the next week till the next one turned up. Brian enjoyed reading and was always keen to broaden his knowledge. Right, now back to the farming story. It's very hard to condense 65 years of active farming life and memories into a few minutes, but we've tried our best. Brian went from a 15-year-old coming home from school to a share farmer, then landholder, and then to still drive the air seeder at 80 years of age before the farm was leased is quite a story. When Brian was young, work on the farm was hard. Grain and fertiliser was all bagged and the machinery was basic. First tractor Brian drove was an L model case with a steel seat. Barry remembers having a stack of about 500 unsewn bags built on a slight rise at Baker's. By next morning, gravity had taken its toll and half of them were on their side. Next job, stand them up and refill them. Lesson learned. One of Brian's stories he liked to tell was when Murray Willing was carting grain. In those early bulk handling days, it was up the elevator in bags. Murray would hook the bottom of the bag when it got to the truck and then empty them into the truck. Apparently Murray told Brian and Barry they weren't loading the elevator fast enough. He shouldn't have. The boys were laughing and Murray definitely wasn't. Barry said back then there were 4 seasons in a year. They were stone picking, seeding, stone picking, and then harvest. Then repeat the next year. and luckily mechanical pickers and rollers were used later on. In the 1960s, while Dad was share farming for Miss Price, she took over what we call Buckley's, and Brian and Barry started share farming this block, gradually buying their own plant or building it. In our family, Brian was a welder. He was mostly self-taught, originally on the 32-volt plant with some help from Dean Allen at Cainton. During the 60s, Brian, Barry and Dad built a paddock bin, cattle yard, silos, stock hurdles and many other projects. In the photos coming up, there is a photo of Brian painting those hurdles while sitting on the arms of the front end loader that he built. When prickle chains became popular, Brian's comment was, "We can make one of them." And we did. Easy. In the 60s, pigs were a part of farm life, especially ours. After having commercial pigs for a while, Brian and Barry established the Clinton Hills Large White Stud. Initially running the pigs outside, they then built one of the very first pig sheds with slatted floors in South Australia. And there's an article about it in one of the books on the table there. Barry said the first stud boar was sold for 75 guineas, or about $225. Clinton Hills travelled to many stud pig sales around the state, from Minnipa to Jamestown to Bordertown, many places in between. 1968 was the first year the stud showed at the Adelaide Royal Show. Later come Sydney and Perth Royals. Many champion ribbons and good sale prices were celebrated. Sometimes too much, but they were celebrated. During this time, Brian was nominated and elected to serve on the South Australian Pig Breeders Association. Brian and Jan made many lifelong friendships during these years, including the Wandles, Aldenhovens, Bakers, Leonards, Fifes and Coffs, just to name a few. I remember going to Sydney with Brian in the Bedford truck, top speed, 45 mile an hour. And that truck also did 2 or 3 trips to Perth when the Nullarbor was still a dirt road. On one trip, when Brian and I were going to Perth in the Acco, we smashed the windscreen at Yalada near the Bight. Next available windscreen, Perth, 720 cold and windy kilometres away. Always wanting to improve the genetics of the stud, Brian and Barry travelled to New Zealand to buy pigs. Unfortunately, while they were there, a disease outbreak ceased all live imports into Australia and stopping them from buying and importing those pigs. It was during those pig years that I came home from school and Dad retired. In 1976, MCINERNEY Brothers Partnership was formed and took over all the share farming from Miss Price. That partnership has lasted 48 years. The same year, MCINERNEY Brothers bought their first section of land from Merv Baker. Also the same year, Clinton Hill Pole Dorset Sheep Stud was registered, selling many rams to locals, and 1 year gaining equal top price here at Paskeville Ram Sales. Over the next few years, we bought more land, and eventually the partnership was able to buy most of the land that the MCINERNEY family had share farmed since 1950. During these years, we all had liked doing different jobs on the farm. Brian did most of the seeding, all without a marker and all dead straight. Some of you would remember our tandem tractors pulling 225 combines. Of course, Brian made the subframe for the rear tractor and the tandem hitch for the combines. Gradually the equipment improved until the Case Magnum and air seeder. And Brian also embraced technology and fitted auto steer to this tractor. The last seeding he did was in 2021 before we leased. At this time he was 80 years of age and still enjoying every minute of driving the tractor, as long as the radio was tuned to the ABC. Brian was also a header driver. I first remember a 12-foot Inter A81 with a trailer bin Barry said that before that there was a shearer. Then the 7-Eleven auto in 1420. Brian would always reap the peas, lentils or vetch with these headers. As in Duncan's tribute, sometimes reaping these could be a very frustrating job, with blockages from snails, prickly lettuce, etc. Patiently and mostly without fuss, Brian would eventually get the job done before moving on to the cereals. In latter years, when we didn't use the 1420, Brian was still keen to drive during harvest. So any time I couldn't be there, he would say, "There's a 2366 ready to go. Are the keys in it? I might reap a bit." A bit was somewhere between 20 and 100 acres. He just loved driving machinery. Brian also loved clearing sales, not so much for buying anything, but to catch up with friends, neighbours and other farmers. Also to check out any machinery modifications and enjoy the day out. Back when Dad was alive, 4 of us would pile into the front of the ute and head off. Sometimes even finding a place to have a cold beer on the way home. Brian was always looking for ways to improve things on the farm. He always strived to improve crop yields, pig and sheep genetics and machinery performance. All he wanted was to be a good farmer. And he should be proud of his achievements. It has been an honour and a pleasure to have travelled this farming journey with you. Your journey is over and your hard work is done. Rest peacefully, brother.
Thank you, Trevor. Some wonderful memories of the 3 brothers on the farm. Dave Spenceley would like to come forward and pay tribute to Brian on behalf of the National Pigeon Association and the South Australian Canary and Pigeon Society. Thank you, Dave.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dave Spenceley. I'm the current president of South Australian Canary and Pigeon Society. Many, of course, know that Brian was an avid pigeon fancier, but I'd like to explain his enthusiasm and commitment to the hobby. Brian was a life member of the South Australian Canary and Pigeon Society, Australian National Pigeon Meritorious Service Award recipient, member of the Australian Jacobin Club, and founder member of the South Australian Lark Club. This has been touched on, but I'll carry on. Brian was lucky to have the support of Jan, who not long after they were married, rekindled his love of pigeons by purchasing a few pairs of pigeons for Brian. After settling them in, he announced that, as appreciative as he was of the pygmy powders Jan had got him, if he was going to keep pigeons, it might as well be really good ones. And thus started his love of Jacobins, which spans decades. Brian travelled extensively, both locally and interstate, exhibiting his birds. And when the chance came in 2006, he was off to the USA with friends Ian Campton and Peter Tennyson, a trip he never forgot. On his return, he and his fellow Jacobin breeders caught up with the late Darcy Cook, a true legend of the Jacobin breed. I imagine a great day was had by all, and there's a photo that commemorates this. I'll give it to Jan. Brian showed and judged Jacobins at the very height of their popularity, when the classes were extremely large, and the norm, large classes were the norm, and the competition was extremely intense. He also judged at this level, which he took in his stride, and was revered by his fellow fanciers. He was a great man to travel with, and people like David and Dale Lewis, Stan Waters, Bruce Pengelly and myself all spent so much time sitting in a vehicle with a trailer load of birds behind them, travelling the length and breadth of Australia. The conversations were incredible, ranging on every subject imaginable, and on the return trip, the inevitable analysis of everyone's experience with judges and fellow fanciers. not always glowing reviews. Those weekends at local and national shows became the highlight of all our show season years, with great times enjoyed over a few beers and good meals, or even a footy game. It was at these gatherings I really got to appreciate Brian's sharp sense of humour and his ability to always be a humble and very supportive companion. His stories of travelling chain pigs and farm life and the way he told them is something I found very interesting. When birds were available to import, Brian, Stan, Bruce and myself joined forces, imported 9 Nuremberg larks from Europe, and so the South Australian Lark Club was formed. It became one of the hardest tasks to win the coveted Lark Trophy, a recycled part of a veranda post, and the subject of hilarious banter and jibing. Brian was a passionate club member and guided the Canary and Pigeon Society through a couple of very difficult periods and made it the success it is today. On posting news of his passing on social media earlier this week, tributes poured in from all over Australia, Ireland and the USA, the most consistent tribute being a gentleman of the hobby, something that's not easy to achieve. In closing, I'd like to thank Jan and family for giving me the opportunity to share these few words in celebration of Brian. I personally was so lucky to have regarded Brian as my mate, mentor and friend to my family, not just a pigeon friend. His contribution to the hobby will always be recognised and appreciated by us all. Rest in peace, my friend Brian. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. A lovely insight into Brian's love of pigeons and his hobby. We've heard many memories and stories. It's time now to watch a presentation of pictures that the family has put together, and they represent Brian's life. Enjoy the memories and the music.
Rows and flows of angel hair and ice cream castles in the air and feathered canyons everywhere. I've looked at clouds that way, but now they only block the sun. They rain and they snow on everyone. So many things I would have done, but clouds got in my way. I've looked at clouds from both sides now, from up and down, and still somehow it's cloud illusions I recall. I really don't know clouds at all. Tears and fears and feeling proud to say I love you right out loud. Dreams and schemes and circus crowds, I've looked at life that way. But now old friends, they're acting strange, and they shake their heads and they tell me I've changed. Something's lost, but something's gained in living every day. I've looked at life from both sides now, from win and lose, and still somehow it's life's illusions I recall. I really don't know life at all. It's life's illusions that I recall. I really don't know life. Really don't know life at all.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. helping hand I'll lean upon. This is my prayer, my humble plea. May the Lord be ever with me. There is no death, though eyes grow dim. There is no fear when I'm near to Him. I'll lean on Him forever, and He'll forsake me never. He will not fail me as long as my faith is strong. Whatever road I may walk along, I'll walk with God, I'll take His hand, I'll talk with God, He'll understand. I'll pray to Him each day, to Him, and He'll hear the word that I say. His hand will guide my throne and rod, and I'll never walk alone while I walk with God.
Many memories in those photos today. Let me go. We've known lots of pleasure, at times endured pain. We've lived in the sunshine and we've walked in the rain. But now we're separated and for a time apart. But I'm not alone, you're forever in my heart. Death always seems so sudden and it is always sure. But what is oft forgotten, it's not without a cure. There may be times you miss me, I sort of hope you do. But smile when you think of me, for I'll be waiting for you. Now there's many things for you too, and lots of ways to grow. So get busy, be happy, and live your life. Miss me, but let me go. Family and friends, it comes time for us to say farewell to Brian. Brian, what a wonderful life you've lived and what an impact you've made on others. There's no doubt today that at the end of your time here, you've left behind so many hearts that are aching. You've left so many tears of and pains of grief, but my goodness, you've left behind so many warm memories and a beautiful legacy of love for your family and friends. And so it is with gratitude that we now commit all these fond memories to be locked away in our hearts. Brian, we celebrate you, we honour you, but most of all we pay tribute to that consistent love and sense of fun that you always shared so willingly with your family and the comradeship with your friends. And we're never going to forget you. In that certain knowledge, may you rest in peace. Brian Harold McINERNEY, our Brian. Family and friends, that concludes the service today for Brian. On behalf of Jan, Karen, Kim, Duncan and the extended family, I thank you for your attendance here today and your attention. It is very much appreciated. In a moment, following the immediate family, you'll be able to come forward and place a tribute on the table to Brian and see some of the mementos of his life. You're then invited to make your way out through this door and remain outside for a little while so the caterers can then get the inside here ready, and the family invites you back inside shortly for light refreshments and an opportunity to further reminisce Brian's life. I thank you very much.
Sola sogno l'orizzonte, mancano le parole. Sì, lo so che luce in una stanza quando manca il sole. Se non ci sei tu con me, sì. Le finestre mostrar tutto il mio cuore che è acceso. Chiudi dentro me la luce che ha incontrato per strada. Time to say goodbye. Paesi che non ho mai veduto e vissuto con te. Adesso sì li vivrò con te. Partirò sulla vita per mari che io lo so, l'uomo non esistono più. It's time to say goodbye.
Quando sei lontana sogno all'orizzonte e manca le parole. E io sì lo so che sei con me, con me. Tu mia luna, tu sei qui con me. Mio sole, tu sei qui con me, con me, con me, con me. Time to say goodbye. Paesi che non ho mai veduto e vissuto con te. Adesso sì li vivrò con te.